The great hall was filled with alien voices, all speaking against humanity. Jack Morrison sat alone at the human table, watching as one species after another stood to vote. The Velkari clicked their mandibles as they spoke, their insect-like faces showing disgust. The Zephyrians hummed in harmonic tones that made the air vibrate with their disapproval. Even the ancient Thornax, who had lived for thousands of years, moved their tree-like heads in agreement with the others. Jack had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Union for 15 years. He had seen many debates in this chamber, but never one like this. Every alien species in the hall wanted humanity gone. They called humans too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to remain in their peaceful union. The Velkari speaker raised his forearms high above his head. His voice came through the translator as sharp clicks and buzzes. The human species has shown time and again that they cannot control their aggressive nature, he said. They solve every problem with violence. They build weapons when others build gardens. They train soldiers when others train artists. The Galactic Union was formed to bring peace to our galaxy, but humans bring only war. Other voices joined in agreement. The crystalline Zephyrians sang their support in beautiful but cold tones. The gaseous Nabari floated in their containment suits, their forms shifting with anger. The reptilian Draconis hissed their approval. One by one, each species added their voice to the chorus demanding human expulsion. Captain Lisa Hayes sat in the gallery above, wearing her Earth Defense Fleet uniform. She watched the proceedings with growing anger, but she kept her face calm. She had served in the Union peacekeeping forces for 10 years. She had fought alongside these same aliens, who now called her people dangerous. She had saved their lives and they had saved hers. Now they acted like they had never known her at all. The Thornic Elder spoke next. His voice was deep and slow, like wind through ancient forests. In my 3,000 years of life I have seen many species rise and fall, he said. The humans are young and full of fire, but fire burns and fire destroys. We cannot allow such destruction in our peaceful union. Jack Morrison finally stood up. The hall fell silent as all eyes turned to him. He was not a tall man, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. His gray hair was neat, his blue uniform pressed and clean. He looked around the chamber at faces that had once welcomed him with friendship. I have listened to your words, Jack said. His voice was calm and steady. You call us violent. You call us dangerous. You say we bring only war and destruction. He paused, letting his words sink in. Perhaps you are right. A murmur ran through the chamber. The aliens had expected him to argue, to defend humanity with passionate speeches. Instead, he simply nodded. We are what our history has made us, Jack continued. We come from a world where survival meant being strong, where peace was something you fought for, not something you were given, where danger lurked around every corner and only the prepared survived. He looked directly at the Velkari speaker. You call this violence, we call it readiness. The Draconis representative hissed softly. You prove our point, human. Your words show why your species cannot be trusted. Jack smiled, but there was no warmth in it. And your words show why you will never understand us. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small blue sphere. It was Earth's symbol in the Union, a perfect replica of his homeworld. He placed it gently on the table before him. The Terran Confederation accepts your decision, he said. We will withdraw from all Union territories. We will remove our people from your worlds. We will close our embassies and recall our ambassadors. We will end all trade agreements and military cooperation. His voice remained steady, but something cold had entered it. You want us gone? Very well, we are gone. The chamber erupted in surprised voices. The Zephyrians sang in confusion. The Velkari clicked frantically among themselves. This was not what they had expected. They thought humans would rage and threaten. They thought there would be angry words and demands for reconsideration. Ambassador Keth of the Braxian Empire stood up quickly. His purple skin had turned pale with worry. Surely we can discuss some form of limited cooperation, he said. Trade arrangements, perhaps. Scientific exchange programs. Jack was already gathering his papers. He looked up at Keth with tired eyes. You have declared us too dangerous to associate with, he said. We are simply respecting your wishes. Good day, ambassadors. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet hall. Captain Hayes stood up in the gallery and followed him out. Behind them, the aliens sat in stunned silence. They had gotten exactly what they asked for, but somehow it felt like they had lost something important. In the corridor outside, Lisa caught up with Jack. Sir, she said quietly, are we really going to leave everything behind? Jack stopped, walking, and looked back at the chamber doors. Through the transparent metal, they could see the aliens arguing among themselves. Some looked worried now. Some looked confused. A few looked afraid. They made their choice, Captain, Jack said. They think they know what danger looks like. They think we are the threat they need to fear. He turned away from the doors and started walking again. Perhaps it is time they learned what real danger feels like, and what happens when the dangerous ones are no longer there to protect them. As they walked down the long corridor toward the human embassy, neither of them spoke again. Behind them, the great hall continued to buzz with confused alien voices, all wondering if they had just made a terrible mistake. But it was too late now. The vote had been cast. Humanity was leaving the galaxy to fend for itself. And somewhere, in the dark spaces between the stars, ancient things that had been sleeping for millennia began to stir. 6 months had passed since the vote, and the galaxy watched in growing confusion as humanity began to disappear. Admiral Kyle Bennett stood on the bridge of the TSS Enterprise, watching as the last human transport ships lifted off from the planet below. 3 million humans had called this world home for over 50 years. Now they were leaving, taking everything they could carry and destroying everything they could not. The operation was massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of ships moved between star systems carrying people and cargo away from Union space. But it was not just people leaving. The humans were taking their knowledge with them, their technology, their skills, and most importantly, their protection. Dr. Nina Rodriguez walked through the corridors of the Galactic Medical Center one last time. She had worked here for 12 years, developing cures for diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries. The research labs were empty now, their equipment packed and loaded onto cargo ships. The computer databases had been wiped clean. 20 years of medical research was gone. The Zephyrian doctor who had worked beside her for years approached with confusion, singing in his crystalline voice. Nina, surely you cannot take all of this knowledge away. The plague vaccines alone have saved billions of lives across the galaxy. Nina looked at her old colleague with sad eyes. The Union Council declared human knowledge too dangerous to be trusted, she said. We are simply following their guidance. They clearly believe their own scientists can handle these problems better than we can. On the mining world of Kepler-7, Foreman Danny Carter supervised the shutdown of the largest rare mineral extraction operation in 3 sectors. The massive machines that had pulled precious metals from the planet's core were being dismantled piece by piece. The Thornak overseers watched in growing panic as their primary source of technology materials disappeared before their eyes. You cannot simply abandon these operations, Elder Graxis said, his bark-like skin creaking with distress. Our entire civilization depends on these minerals for our technology. Without them, we will fall back to pre-industrial levels within a generation. Danny wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the ancient tree being. Should have thought of that before you voted us out, he said. Union policy clearly states that dangerous species cannot operate in Union space. We are just following the rules you made. Engineer Pete Wilson was having similar conversations all across the galaxy. The quantum communication networks that connected every world in the Union had been built and maintained by human engineers. Now those engineers were leaving, and they were taking their knowledge with them. The complex quantum relays required constant adjustment and maintenance. Without human technicians, the network would fail within months. The Braxian communications minister contacted Pete directly, his purple face flushed with worry. Surely you can train our people to maintain these systems before you leave, he pleaded. Pete shook his head as he packed the last of his diagnostic equipment. Training takes years, he said. You have 6 months. Besides, your council made it clear that human technology is too dangerous for your people to use. We are simply protecting you from that danger. On 17 different worlds, human peacekeeping forces were packing up their bases and heading home. Commander Jake Sullivan watched as his troops loaded their weapons and equipment onto transport ships. For 15 years, his forces had kept the peace between warring alien factions. The Draconis and the Aquarians had been fighting over border systems for centuries before human peacekeepers arrived to mediate. Now those mediators were leaving. The Draconis war chief approached Jake's shuttle as he prepared to depart. "Human. Commander," the reptilian alien hissed. "Without your forces here, the fighting will begin again within days. My people and the Aquarians have only maintained peace because your soldiers enforced it." Jake looked at the war chief with no emotion on his face. "The Union has declared human military forces too aggressive and dangerous," he said. "Surely your own peaceful nature will be enough to maintain order. After all, that is why you wanted us gone." Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. Human doctors closed hospitals that had served alien patients for decades. Human engineers shut down power plants and water treatment facilities. Human teachers left schools where they had educated alien children. Human farmers abandoned agricultural projects that fed entire star systems. The aliens began to realize what they were losing, but it was too late to change course. Pride and politics prevented them from admitting their mistake. Instead, they sent carefully worded messages asking for continued cooperation in specific areas. Admiral Bennett received these messages on the bridge of his flagship. His communications officer handed him the latest batch of requests. 17. More requests for medical assistance, the officer reported. 8 requests for technical support. 4 requests for continued peacekeeping operations. Bennett read through them with a grim expression. The messages all said the same thing in different ways. They wanted human help but did not want to admit they needed it. They asked for cooperation while maintaining that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. "Our response, Admiral?" the communications officer asked. "The same as always," Bennett replied. "The Terran Confederation respects the Union's decision that humanity is too dangerous to associate with. We will honor their wishes completely, Ono." The Union capital world, Ambassador Zakthi paced his chambers frantically. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were collapsing without human logistic support. Scientific research had slowed to a crawl without human innovation and knowledge sharing. Bardar. Disputes that had been settled for years were heating up again without human mediators. The Velkari ambassador contacted his government with growing alarm. "The humans are actually leaving," he reported. "They are taking everything with them. Our mineral supplies are cut off. Our communication networks are failing. Our medical centers cannot treat diseases we have been curing for decades." The response from his homeworld was swift and angry. "This is clearly a human trick," came the reply. "They are trying to force us to change our decision through economic manipulation. We must not give in to their pressure tactics." But it was not pressure tactics. The humans were simply leaving, quietly and efficiently. They did not threaten or demand. They did not try to negotiate or bargain. They just packed up their lives and disappeared, taking with them all the things the galaxy had taken for granted. Captain Lisa Hayes stood in the observation deck of a transport ship, watching as Earth grew larger in the view screen. Behind them, the galaxy they were leaving was already beginning to change. Without human peacekeepers, old conflicts were reigniting. Without human technology, communication between worlds was becoming slow and difficult. Without human knowledge, problems that had been solved were becoming dangerous again. "Do you think they will ask us to come back?" her aide asked. Lisa shook her head. "Their pride will not let them admit they made a mistake," she said. "They will try to solve their problems without us, and they will fail. Only when they have no other choice will they swallow their pride and ask for help." She turned away from the view screen and headed for her quarters. "By then," she said quietly, "it may be too late for all of us." 1 year after humanity left, the galaxy had become a much quieter place. But it was not the peaceful quiet the Union had hoped for. It was the silence of failing systems and growing fear. Dr. Sarah Kim sat in her laboratory on Mars, monitoring news feeds from across the galaxy. The screens showed images that filled her with dread. A plague had broken out on 3 Velkari worlds, the same disease she had developed vaccines for 5 years ago. The knowledge of how to make those vaccines was locked away in human databases, and the manufacturing facilities were empty and cold. The Velkari had tried to recreate the vaccines using their own scientists, but they lacked the understanding of human biochemistry that had made the original treatment possible. Thousands were dying every day, and the numbers were growing. The proud insect-like beings who had been so quick to vote against humanity were now watching their people suffer from diseases that could be easily cured. Sarah turned off the news feeds and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the lights of New Geneva, the human city that had grown on Mars since the Exodus began. Millions of humans who had once lived among the stars were now crowded onto their home worlds, but they were making the best of it. They were building new cities, new industries, new lives away from the galaxy that had rejected them. Captain Ron Davis sat in a monitoring station on the edge of human space, listening to the communications traffic from Union worlds. His job was to keep track of what was happening in the galaxy they had left behind. The reports he filed each day painted a picture of a civilization in slow collapse. The Zephyrian-Braxian trade route collapsed yesterday, he reported to Admiral Bennett. Without human logistics coordinators, they cannot manage the complex scheduling required for multi-species cargo transfers. The Thornak mineral shipments are 3 months behind schedule. The Draconis military is reporting increasing raids by pirates in the outer systems. Admiral Bennett read the reports with a grim expression. Any request for assistance? 17 more this week, Ron replied. All carefully worded to avoid admitting they need us. They ask for technical consultation and temporary advisory support, but never say the word help. Bennett nodded. The pattern had become familiar. The alien species were too proud to admit they had made a mistake, but they were desperate enough to keep asking for human aid in increasingly creative ways. The standard response never changed, though. The Terran Confederation would not associate with species that considered them too dangerous. On the Union capital world, Ambassador Zak Thi had lost weight. His once proud carapace looked dull and cracked from stress. The reports crossing his desk painted a picture of disaster spreading across the galaxy. The border wars that human peacekeepers had kept under control for decades were exploding into full conflicts. The Aquarians and Draconis had resumed their ancient territorial dispute within days of human peacekeepers leaving. Without neutral mediators, their negotiations had broken down completely. 3 star systems were now battlegrounds, and the fighting was spreading. Other species were being forced to choose sides or flee their homes. The quantum communication network that had connected the galaxy was failing. The complex relay stations required constant maintenance and adjustment, work that only human engineers had truly understood. Messages that once traveled across the galaxy in hours now took weeks. In some cases, entire star systems had gone silent, cut off from all outside contact. Ambassador Zak Thi tried calling an emergency session of the Union Council, but it took 6 days just to get the message to all member worlds. When they finally gathered, the chamber that had once been filled with confident voices was subdued and worried. The situation is becoming critical, announced Ambassador Keth of the Braxian Empire. His purple skin had faded to a sickly lavender color. Our trade networks are collapsing. Our communication systems are failing. Border conflicts are spreading across entire sectors. The Thornak representative, Elder Graxus, spoke slowly and carefully. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our decision regarding the humans, he suggested. Their withdrawal has had more severe consequences than we anticipated. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. For a year, no one had been willing to suggest that removing humanity from the Union might have been a mistake. The Velkari had been the most vocal opponents of humanity, but now Ambassador Zak Thi looked around the chamber with desperate eyes. We voted them out because they were dangerous, he said, but without them we are discovering what real danger looks like. The galaxy is falling apart. The Zephyrian representatives sang a mournful harmony. Their presence may have been unsettling, but their absence is proving catastrophic. The humans were the glue that held our civilization together, and we threw them away. But pride and politics prevented any real action. The species that had voted against humanity could not admit their mistake without losing face before their own people. Instead, they continued to send carefully worded requests for assistance, hoping the humans would eventually give in and help them despite their exile. Captain Lisa Hayes, now promoted to Admiral of the Home Fleet, received these requests at her command center on Luna Base. Each message was read and filed away without response. Her orders were clear. The Terran Confederation would have no contact with the species that had declared them too dangerous to associate with. But privately, Lisa worried about what she was seeing in the intelligence reports. The galaxy was not just experiencing political and economic problems. There were disturbing signs of something else stirring in the dark spaces between stars. Deep space monitoring stations were detecting unusual energy signatures. Several remote worlds had gone silent without explanation. Strange objects had been spotted moving through uninhabited systems. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported, during their daily briefing. We are detecting increased activity in the void sectors. The automated monitoring stations are registering massive energy discharges consistent with advanced technology. Lisa studied the reports with growing unease. The void sectors were the empty regions beyond the galactic rim, areas that had been considered safe for millennia. But the energy signatures matched patterns from humanity's oldest archives, records from before the Union was formed, from the dark times when ancient threats had last stirred. How long has this activity been increasing? She asked. The pattern started about 6 months ago, the officer replied. It has been growing steadily stronger. Some of our xenoarchaeologists think it might be connected to the Void Hunters. The name sent a chill through Lisa's blood. The Void Hunters were legends from the galaxy's ancient past, machine intelligences that had swept through civilized space eons ago, consuming entire worlds before mysteriously disappearing. Most species considered them myths, stories told to frighten children. But humanity remembered. Human archives contained detailed records of the last Void Hunter incursion, passed down through generations of military historians. The machines had been defeated before, but only through the combined efforts of dozens of species working together with weapons and tactics that had been lost to time. Lisa looked out the window of her command center at the Earth hanging in space. Below, billions of humans lived on the worlds of the solar system now, refugees from a galaxy that had cast them out. They had spent the last year rebuilding their lives and their civilization. But if the Void Hunters were truly awakening, then isolation would not protect them. Continue monitoring the situation, she ordered, and begin reviewing our archives on historical threats from beyond the rim. If what I suspect is happening actually comes to pass, the galaxy is about to learn why it needed dangerous allies. Outside, in the cold depths of space, ancient sensors detected the stirring of power that had been dormant for millennia. Across the galaxy, the species of the Union continued their squabbles and their slow decline, unaware that something far worse than human aggression was beginning to wake up in the darkness beyond their borders. 2 years after humanity left the Union, the galaxy faced its first real crisis without them. The warnings had been there for months, strange energy readings from the void sectors beyond the galactic rim, but the Union species had been too busy dealing with their collapsing civilization to pay attention. Now it was too late. The first attack came without warning. The Velkari outer colony of Heskah simply vanished from all communication one day. When scout ships arrived to investigate, they found nothing but empty space where a thriving world of 12 million beings had once existed. The planet was gone, consumed down to its core, leaving only a field of metallic debris that pulsed with unknown energy. Ambassador Zakthi received the report in his chambers on the Union capital. His hands shook as he read the details. The description matched ancient legends his people had dismissed as myths. The Void Hunters had returned, and they were hungry after their long sleep. Within days, 3 more worlds went silent. Union fleets rushed to defend them, But they arrived to find the same thing: empty space and glowing debris. The enemy ships were like nothing the galaxy had seen in living memory. They were massive constructs of dark metal and pulsing energy, shaped like geometric nightmares that hurt to look at. They moved through space with impossible speed and precision, their weapons turning entire worlds to dust in minutes. General Alex Stone had been humanity's foremost expert on Void Hunter technology during his time with Union intelligence. His research files contained the only detailed analysis of their weapons, their tactics, and their weaknesses. But those files were locked away in human archives now, beyond the reach of the species that had cast humanity out. The Union military tried to fight with their own knowledge and their own weapons. The results were catastrophic. The proud Velkari battle fleets, thousands of ships strong, met the Void Hunters in the Kepler system. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, debris from Velkari warships drifted through space like metallic snow, while the Void Hunter machines continued their advance without slowing down. Admiral Hayes watched the reports from her command center on Luna Base. Each update painted a grimmer picture. The enemy was not just destroying worlds and fleets. They were learning, adapting, growing stronger with each victory. The machine intelligence that drove them was analyzing Union defenses and developing new weapons to counter every tactic the aliens tried. They are following the same pattern as the historical records, reported Colonel Ben Foster, her tactical officer. First, they test the defenses, then they adapt, then they sweep through entire sectors. The Union species have no idea what they are facing. Hayes studied the tactical displays showing Void Hunter movements. The ancient machines were carving a path of destruction through Union space, heading directly for the most populated systems. At their current rate of advance, they would reach the Union capital in less than 6 months. Any requests from the Union for assistance, she asked. Hundreds, Ben replied. But they are still too proud to use the word help. They ask for military consultation and strategic advice, but they never admit they need us to fight for them. Hayes nodded grimly. The Union was facing extinction, but their pride would not let them ask their former allies to save them. Meanwhile, the Void Hunters continued their relentless advance, consuming everything in their path. On the Union capital, emergency sessions of the Council were held daily as reports of new disasters poured in. The Thornak homeworld was under siege by machines that seemed to feed on the very life energy of the ancient tree beings. The Zephyrian crystal cities were being harvested for their unique minerals, their beautiful harmonies replaced by the screams of the dying. Entire star systems were going dark as the enemy consumed their stars for fuel. Ambassador Zach Thie stood before the assembled representatives, his once proud carapace now scarred from a recent Void Hunter attack on his own homeworld. "We face total extinction," he announced. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls. Our defenses crumble before their advance." The chamber was filled with the sounds of despair. Species that had lived for millennia were watching their civilizations die. The Aquarians wept tears that crystallized in the cold air. The gaseous Nabari flickered with fear in their containment suits. Even the ancient Thornaks, who had survived countless disasters, began to speak of the end of all things. "What of the humans?" asked Elder Graxus, his voice barely a whisper. "They have historical knowledge of these machines. They must know how to fight them." A bitter silence fell over the chamber. Every being present knew the answer. The humans had been cast out, declared too dangerous to associate with. Now, when the galaxy faced its greatest threat, those dangerous allies were unreachable behind the walls of their own pride. "They will not answer our calls," said the Zephyrian representative, his crystalline form dim with despair. "We severed those bonds ourselves. We called them monsters and threw them away. Why would they help us now?" Ambassador Zach Thie looked around the chamber at the faces of the dying. Some showed anger, others showed fear, but most showed the hollow look of beings who had accepted their fate. "Because," he said quietly, "we have no other choice. Someone must try to reach them." The vote was unanimous. A small diplomatic ship would be sent to human space, carrying representatives who would beg for the help they had once scorned. It was a desperate measure, but desperation was all they had left. Dr. Sarah Kim watched the news reports from her laboratory on Mars with a heavy heart. The galaxy she had once called home was burning, consumed by an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The medical centers where she had saved alien lives were now craters filled with radioactive glass. The colleagues who had worked beside her for years were fleeing as refugees or lying dead in the ruins of their worlds. But there was something else in the reports that caught her attention. The Void Hunters were not just destroying randomly. They were targeting specific locations, specific types of technology, specific knowledge centers. They were following patterns that matched something she had seen in old human military files. She accessed the classified archives that General Stone had compiled during his years with Union intelligence. The files painted a chilling picture. The Void Hunters were not mindless destroyers. They were harvesters collecting specific resources and knowledge for some greater purpose. The pattern of their attacks suggested they were preparing for something even worse. Admiral Hayes received Sarah's report, along with confirmation that a Union diplomatic ship was approaching human space. The message was simple and desperate. The galaxy was dying, and only humanity had the knowledge to save it. "What are your orders, Admiral?" asked Colonel Foster. Hayes stared at the tactical display showing the spread of Void Hunter forces across Union space. Half the galaxy was already dark, its worlds consumed or abandoned. The other half would follow within months unless something changed. The species that had cast humanity out as too dangerous were now discovering what real danger looked like. "Prepare a response team," she ordered, "and begin mobilizing the defense fleets. The Union is about to learn why the galaxy needed dangerous allies." She paused, looking at the expanding zone of destruction on the display. "The question is whether there will be anything left to save by the time we reach them." Outside, in the depths of space, the Void Hunter fleets continued their relentless advance. Behind them lay a trail of consumed worlds and shattered civilizations. Ahead lay the bright core of Union space, where billions of beings waited unknowingly for their doom. And somewhere between them, humanity prepared to face an ancient enemy once again, carrying weapons and knowledge that the galaxy had rejected as too dangerous. The irony was not lost on anyone who understood the situation. The galaxy had cast out humanity for being too violent, too aggressive, too ready for war. Now, when true violence had awakened from its ancient sleep, those same qualities might be the only thing standing between civilization and total extinction. 3 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Union, Ambassador Zakti sat alone in a small diplomatic shuttle approaching the edge of human space. His proud carapace was scarred and cracked from battles he had never expected to fight. His homeworld was ash and memory now, consumed by the Void Hunters along with billions of his people. He was one of the few Valkyrie left alive, and he carried the weight of his species' survival on his broken shoulders. The human border patrol ship that intercepted him was unlike anything he remembered from the old days, where Union ships had been built for exploration and peaceful contact. This vessel was clearly designed for war. Its hull bristled with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Its armor was thick and scarred, showing signs of recent combat. Even its greeting was delivered by armed soldiers rather than diplomats. Admiral Lisa Hayes met him aboard the TSS Defiance in the neutral zone between human and former Union space. The years since humanity's exodus had changed her. She wore the white uniform of the Terran Defense Forces now, not the blue of Union peacekeepers. Her eyes were harder, her bearing more military. She looked like someone who had spent 3 years preparing for the war that was now consuming the galaxy. "Ambassador Zakti," she said formally as he entered the meeting room, "you have requested this meeting. Speak." The proud Valkyrie, who had once voted to expel humanity from the Union, now stood broken before her. His translator struggled to convey the emotion in his clicking speech. "Admiral Hayes," he began, then stopped. The words he needed to say were harder than facing the Void Hunters themselves. "We were wrong," he finally whispered, "about everything, about your people, about the nature of danger, about what the galaxy needed." His forearms trembled as he spoke. "We called you violent and cast you out. We said you were too dangerous for civilized society. We were fools. Hayes watched him without expression. Through the viewport behind her, he could see human warships moving in formation. Hundreds of them, all built during humanity's 3 years of exile. All designed with one purpose: to fight enemies that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten existed. The Void Hunters, Zakthi continued. They have consumed half the galaxy. Entire civilizations are gone. Worlds that stood for millions of years are nothing but dust and radiation. Our fleets are destroyed. Our defenses are useless. We have no weapons that can even damage their ships. He paused, gathering what remained of his dignity. We need your help. The galaxy is dying, and you are our only hope. Hayes turned to look out at the refugee ships that filled the space beyond the human border. Millions of alien survivors had fled the advancing Void Hunter fleets, seeking sanctuary in human space. Men, women, and children of dozens of species, all dependent now on the people they had once rejected. You called us dangerous, Hayes said quietly. You said we were unfit for civilized society. You voted unanimously to expel us from your union. She faced him again, and he saw something cold and implacable in her eyes. Tell me, Ambassador, what has changed? Zakthi's translator clicked rapidly as he struggled to find words. We understand now, he said. We mistook strength for savagery. We confused preparedness with aggression. We thought your weapons and your warriors made you violent, but we see now that they made you ready. Hayes nodded slowly. Ready for what? For this. He gestured toward the tactical display that showed the spreading zone of Void Hunter control. For the real dangers that lurk in the dark between stars. For the threats that peaceful civilizations cannot face alone. His voice broke with shame. We cast out our protectors and called it wisdom. Admiral Hayes walked to the display and pointed to the red areas that marked consumed worlds. While you sought safety in isolation, we spent these 3 years preparing. We built weapons you called too dangerous. We trained soldiers you called too violent. We developed strategies you called too aggressive. She looked back at him. We became everything you feared we were. The truth of it hung heavy in the air. Humanity had not spent their exile weeping or trying to rejoin the Union. They had done what humans always did when faced with a threat. They had prepared for war. The ships in the viewports were proof of that preparation. Each one carried weapons that could crack planets and armor that could withstand starfire. Each crew was trained in tactics that the Union had banned as too brutal for civilized warfare. Can you stop them? Zakthi asked desperately. Can humanity save what is left of the galaxy? Hayes considered the question carefully. The tactical reports were grim. The Void Hunters had grown stronger with each world they consumed. Their fleets now numbered in the millions, and they were adapting faster than any biological species could counter. The Union remnants had perhaps months before total extinction. We can try, she said finally. But understand this. If we fight as humanity always has, without restraint, without mercy, without the comfortable limitations your Union tried to impose on us. She stepped closer to him, and he saw the steel in her gaze. We are what we have always been, dangerous. The only question is whether you are finally ready to accept that sometimes the galaxy needs dangerous allies. Zakthi felt something break inside him, some last vestige of pride that had survived the destruction of his world. Yes, he whispered. We accept. We beg. Do whatever you must. Be as dangerous as you need to be. Just please, save what you can. Hayes nodded and turned to her communications officer. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin Operation Redemption. All forces are to advance to the front lines immediately. Through the viewports, Zakthi watched as the human war machine began to move. Thousands of ships that had been hidden in the outer system suddenly appeared, their drives lighting up space like new stars. These were not the exploration vessels he remembered from the old Union. These were instruments of war, built by a species that understood violence in ways his people never could. Admiral Hayes remained at the viewport as her fleets moved past. You want to know what changed? She asked without looking at him. Nothing changed. We are still the same humans you cast out 3 years ago. We still solve problems with force when force is needed. We still build weapons and train warriors. We still prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. She finally turned to face him. The only thing that changed is your understanding. You thought our nature made us dangerous to you. Now you realize it makes us dangerous to your enemies. Her expression softened slightly. We never wanted to be your conquerors, Ambassador. We only ever wanted to be your guardians. As the last of the human battle fleets disappeared into hyperspace, heading for their first engagement with the Void Hunters in over 50 years, Zakthi felt something he had not experienced since his world died. Hope. It was a fragile thing, purchased with pride and paid for with the near extinction of galactic civilization. But it was real. The galaxy would learn in the coming days whether humanity's 3 years of preparation had been enough, whether their weapons could match those of the ancient machines, whether their strategies could overcome an enemy that had been perfecting the art of war for eons, whether their dangerous nature would be sufficient to turn back the darkness that threatened to consume everything. But for the first time since the Void Hunters had awakened, the galaxy had something it had not possessed before. Protectors who were willing to be as dangerous as necessary to keep the light burning in the darkness, and perhaps if they were very lucky, that would be enough.